the Western perspective, when we have looked at happiness, it more feels like a cotton candy. You know, there is no nourishment. It looks very fluffy and nice, and children to adults, everyone loves to have cotton candy, but there is no nourishment or enhanced quality for our life. Pursuit of happiness has become very short term, right? It's a high arousal and instant gratification. And unfortunately, we see this from very young children to adults, where I want to be happy and I want to be happy right now. I don't even care how it's going to impact my well being in a long term. So, what has happened to well being now? I'll come to well being. Our artificial lifestyle has become more chemically driven. Why has suddenly well being become a crisis, like a pandemic? One of the reasons is the industrial revolution and also the Western worldview of nature as a resource has made us exploit nature. You know, we even use the word nature as a resource. You know, the Abrahamic philosophy is that nature is created for us human beings to exploit. However, when we look at Eastern or many specifically philosophy, we look at Bhumi Sukta, we look at Prithvi Sukta, and we think of nature as Mother Earth. And the intergenerational trauma, because industrial generation revolution has actually created intergenerational trauma of damaging Mother Earth. From industry comes our Jivan Mulya. And in the modern language, we call them meta values, right? Positive psychology today is talking a lot about meta values and worldview. But values from Bharatiya Parampara are not disconnected from the drishti. It comes from the drishti. So the moment I say I look at nature as or Mother Earth, Prithvi as Mata. So the moment I wake up in the morning, what do? How do I apply these values and worldview? So I begin my day with a prayer, right? Samudravasane Devi, Parvatastana Mandale, Vishnu Patni Namastubhyam, Padasparsham Kshamaswame. So the moment I look at Mother Earth as a mother and I ask her forgiveness for trampling on her, obviously my consumerism, my materialism will be the minimum. I would not want to harm or damage Mother Earth in any way.
Namaste and welcome to another episode of Indic Talks organized by Center for Indic Studies. I am Ojasvi Mishra and today we shall discuss individual well-being and planetary well-being from the perspective of Indic psychology. Psychology is the meta-science that helps us understand who we are. One of the crises that humanity is facing today is not knowing who we are and how our individual well-being is connected with planetary well-being. We will explore this wisdom from Bharatiya Manas Shastra to understand well-being as a continuum. Bharat has this wisdom from our Rishis, and our responsibility is to take this wisdom to humanity. To elucidate the same, we have our speaker today, Dr. Mala Kapadia ji, who is a highly accomplished scholar and practitioner with a distinguished career spanning research, education, journalism, human resources, and consulting. She is passionate to advocate for integrating ancient wisdom, Indian wisdom, with modern approaches to well-being, leadership, and organizational development. Dr. Kapadia is currently the director of Center for Indigenous Knowledge Systems at the Anaadi Foundation and the principal investigator for a Ministry of Education Indian Knowledge System research project on well-being and happiness based on Ayurveda. I welcome you, ma'am, and I request you to take over from here.
Thank you so much, Ojasvi, and Indus University for inviting me today for this talk on individual and planetary well-being. And I would love to begin with where we are, right? Because unless we really look at where we are today, it will be very difficult to understand where we need to go. and also how individual well-being and planetary well-being are interconnected. So where we are today, everyone has been talking about the VUCA world and the pandemic, right? VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And everyone is going through this crisis, whether they consciously realize or they may not even realize it consciously. Pandemic, we have just been through the pandemic times, lockdown times, and the crisis that we were facing have suddenly come 4E crisis, as I call it. The 4E stands for crisis. Even now, we are going through recession in many countries. Many countries have, already openly started talking about the economic recession that is happening. WHO is already calling the current times to be the crisis of mental health globally, ecological crisis because climate change. We all have been experiencing the extreme weathers, climate fury, and therefore the ecological crisis. However, from the Indic perspective, what I realize that all these three crises, economic, emotional, and ecological, are happening because of the ethical crisis. And the crisis had given rise to all the three crises. So when we look at well-being and happiness today, and well-being and happiness somehow seem to be interconnected. So I'll talk a little happiness as well. From the Western perspective, when we have looked at happiness, it more feels like a cotton candy. You know, there is no nourishment. It looks very fluffy and nice, and children to adults, everyone loves to have cotton candy, but there is no nourishment or enhanced quality for our life. Pursuit of happiness has become very short term, right? It's a high arousal and instant gratification. And unfortunately, we see this from very young children to adults, where I want to be happy and I want to be happy right now. I don't even care how it's going to impact my well being in a long term. So, what has happened to well being now? I come to well being. Our artificial lifestyle has become more chemically driven. Give you a very small example, and maybe a little later we can talk about it in detail. Uh, I was at Sydney Airport and I was in a well-being shop. I mean, see, unfortunately, well-being has become a product, right? And you can go and purchase well-being. And I saw bottles of serotonin and bottles of melatonin. Now, serotonin is a natural hormone which creates happiness within us. I could never even imagine that you can buy serotonin and supplement and use it as a supplement. And then it's melatonin, which helps us sleep. It's a very natural ingredient. It's a natural hormone within our body, which gets secreted in the pituitary gland when we are out in the sunlight. The sunlight helps the pituitary gland to create the hormone. However, for the hormone of melatonin to be functional, needs darkness. In the night, when we want to sleep, melatonin should become active to help us have a good quality sleep. However, because our life is so full of artificial light, still we go to sleep, right? I mean, either it's our phone or it's television, bright lights in the rooms, and therefore the melatonin does not become active. And therefore, from young children onwards, we are seeing insomnia as a major health issue, a major well being issue. However, how are we addressing it? Instead of changing our lifestyle, we are driving chemically, artificially, supplement based to create well being. And therefore, in many of the literature that I researched, well being is projected and seen as a skill, cognitive skill that needs to be learned rather than quality of being. Realize that the epistemology of the sound needs to be understood because most of the well-being and happiness philosophy, literature, surveys, all of them are driven by the weird countries. I mean, what's weird stand for? Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, particularly the USA. So when you look at the curriculum of psychology, they have taken many, many years, I mean, more than 150 years, to even talk about positive psychology. The psychology in the West was driven by pathological psychology. And even the well being is driven by pathological well being rather than the well being of a inner transformational, transcendental way of well being. Therefore, what we need to do is solution, it seems, is very simple. There is already rich and very strong cultural wisdom, indigenous wisdom we have in all indigenous cultures. They need to become a part of our mainstream education, and through education, they also need to become a part of our daily life. However, when you give a little deeper thought to the well-being crisis, why has suddenly well-being become a crisis, like a pandemic? One of the reasons is the industrial revolution and also the Western worldview of nature as a resource has made us exploit nature. We even use the word nature as a resource. The Abrahamic philosophy is that nature is created for us human beings to exploit. However, when we look at Eastern or many specifically Bharatiya philosophy, we look at Bhumi Sukta, we look at Prithvi Sukta, and we think of nature as Mother Earth and the intergenerational trauma, because industrial generation revolution has actually created intergenerational trauma of damaging Mother Earth and therefore damaging our own well-being. Therefore, a very strong need for a Bharatiya framework. We call IKS today is in reality Bhartiya Gyan Parampara. And therefore, we need to, when we look at Bhartiya Gyan Parampara, gives us three things. One is the drishti, the vision. How do we look at the world? How do we look at our own self? And there, that underlying worldview is the drishti, which comes from Bhartiya Gyan Parampara. From drishti comes our Jivan Mulya. And in the modern language, we call them meta values, right? Positive psychology today is talking a lot about meta values and worldview. But the values from Bharatiya Parampara are not disconnected from the drishti. It comes from the drishti. So the moment I say I look at nature as or Mother Earth, Prithvi as Mata. So the moment I wake up in the morning, what do I do? How do I apply these values and worldview? So I begin my day with a prayer, right? Samudravasane Devi, Parvatastana Mandale, Vishnu Patni Namastubhyam, Padasparsham Kshamaswame. So the moment I look at Mother Earth as a mother and I ask her forgiveness for trampling on her, obviously my consumerism, my materialism will be the minimum. I would not want to harm or damage Mother Earth in any way. And that becomes the Lokik Prayojana or the societal application of Drashti and Mulya. For that, Bhartiya Gyan Parampara to become a part of our everyday life, what we need are dharmic frameworks. Because framework ultimately defines the boundary from where we look at the world. It becomes a frame. And what does our culture, our Vedic literature, Bharatiya Manas Shastra, why I'm in love with it? Because it allows us to understand who we are, where we come from, and it allows us to understand the cosmic order, the rhythm to dharma, and then to our own self. So, well-being needs to be seen as a continuum from planetary to individual. And this becomes very clear when we look at few of the dharmic frameworks that I'm sharing here. The first one being the four Purushartha. dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Right? Most of the people in Bharat, at least, now know these frameworks. And it's very beautifully our rishis, our acharyas, our gurus have given dharma the first place, not artha, kama, or even moksha. Right? So, dharma etymologically means dharayati iti dharma, one that holds us, one that sustains us is dharma. And therefore, dharma has to guide, dharma has to become the North Star, a direction giver, a compass for our artha and kama. Also, Sanskrit is a very beautiful language. Artha, one level means economic prosperity, wealth. Artha at another level means meaningfulness, something that is giving meaning to our life, purpose in life, deeper understanding in our life of how Lok Kalyan and Swa Kalyan are interrelated. How we are not just should pursue individual happiness, but we need to be aware of our social connectivity, environmental connectivity. Kama mainly is translated as desire, but it's not just desire and pleasure. We look at kama as only desire and pleasure, comes to the same cotton candy concept of the happiness which worldwide now from the Western weird world has percolated. However, karma also like dharma has to be guided by karma like artha has to be guided by dharma. And only then karma becomes very legitimate and we have a boundary. So our karma needs to be followed or followed by indriya jaya, not indulgence of indriya, but become vigili of our indriya and then enjoy whatever we are capable of enjoying within the boundary of dharma. Moksha, of course, at one level, it means spiritual liberation, liberation from rebirth. But another level, moksha also means outgrowing our own patterns. We all are a victim, or we are in the prison of our way of thinking, our way of living, and we keep on repeating it because of the tamas within us. From tamas, the moment we go to sattva, then we realize that I can outgrow my own limitation. So the first dharmic framework is that of four purushartha. And unfortunately, I have seen some of the Western books talk about purushartha or papers that talk about purushartha, but they are not maintaining the order. They may talk of artha, kama, dharma, and moksha. That's not the way, our Bhartiya way of looking at four Purushartha. Dharma precedes Artha and Kama. Also connect four Purushartha is the concept or construct of Pancha Rina. Rina is the rule, the we are all born with. Bhuta, Lok, Pitru, Guru, and Devata. So all bhutas, bhuta is not ghost, right? I mean, unfortunately, many in English press made fun of the Bhuta Vidya course. One of the reputed university was planning to introduce as a part of Ayurveda. And because the English press made fun of the word bhuta as ghost, that the course was not delivered and it was cancelled. But bhuta, bhu, it comes from the word bhu. It's a dynamic being. It's an evolving being. It is to be. And we are in a bhuta around us. Why? Because they support us. They give us life. And we are also made up of the Panch Mahabhuta. So the Panch Mahabhuta outside cosmic level, macrocosmic level, microcosm level, and the microcosm that are we, that we are also made up of the same Panchamutta. Then lok means place of existence. The lok can be the Prithvi Loka, the lok can be the society, the community, and we are No, let's live in isolation. Look, we are right now going through a Pitru Paksha, right? Every indigenous culture, we realize that they do their shraddha, they express their shraddha, they express their gratitude to the ancestors, to the parampara. Guru, of course, are the light that have shown us the path into the darkness. And Devata are the higher beings who have some supernatural powers and ability to guide us, to make us evolve in this process of evolution. So, from four Purushartha, we come to Pancharana, and then ultimately, there are three frameworks which I find very beautifully connected with our well being and the well being of the planet, well being of the cosmos. One is Lok Purusha Samya Siddhanta. Lok is, as I said, the cosm, the macrocosm, right? And Purusha is the microcosm. Samya is similarity, and Siddhant means the first principles. So Ayurveda begins with cosmology to understand self. And then it says that there is a samya, there is a similarity. What is outside is within us. So if Akash is outside, there is also Akash within us. Akash is all the empty places in the food pipe, in the windpipe, in stomach, right? In our intestine, at a very physical Annamay Kosha level. But Akash is also there as Chidakash. Akash is also there as Dahara Akash within our heart. In Lalita Sahasranam, one of the places where the deity, the Devi resides is Daharakash. And in Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, we say that all knowledge resides in Daharakash. So these are some of the examples. There is Jyoti, right? There is sun, there is solar system. And the same Jyoti is within us. The Jyoti is the power to digest the food, transform the food to nutrition. But Jyoti is also the power in our knowledge system, in our manas, in our pragya, to transform the information and knowledge to wisdom. When we learn this Lokapurush Samya Siddhant, we will not look at the planet and us as separate. We will realize how we are a continuum, and naturally, we will not harm the external well being, and we'll also take care of our internal well being. Second framework, third, fourth framework, the second framework in Ayurveda is Hitayu and Sukhayu framework. This is my project with Ministry of Education, IKS division, where I'm creating a framework and a survey to assess happiness and well-being from a very different perspective. And we'll reconnect with Hitayu and Sukhayu framework in a little while. Then it's Janpadodhwansa framework. When, for me, my Bhagavad Gita is my Charak Samhita. And I immediately started searching Charak Samhita for some guidance to sail through the pandemic phase. And I found in Vimansthana an entire chapter on the Janapadodhvansa, Jan larger collection of people. And Udvamsa is their destruction. So we'll come to this framework little later. So as we realize what is Ayurveda? Ayu is life, it's the lifespan. It's also longevity in Ayurveda. It's not just that you live longer. You know, Jivet Sharadam Shatam. You at least minimum 100 years, 120 years is a life in Kali Yuga on this planet. However, it has to be healthy because in many countries today we see and lot of those well-being or wellness surveys talk about many countries that have longevity of life. However, when we look at the quality of life of those older people in Japan, in Europe, in America, it's not something that you really want to live long for. Most of them are alone, with a lot of physical and mental issues, suffering with Parkinson's, uh, paralysis, Alzheimer, etc., and cut off from your family, staying alone in an old age home. And Ayurveda says that no, life has to be long, but life also has to be happy. And for that, it has to be a meaningful life. The meaning of life comes from following four Purushartha and giving back our rina to the five uh, places of worship that where we need to be indebted. Veda is knowledge. So knowledge of how do you live a healthy, happy life if Ayurveda is Ayurveda. And even today, I think we are one of those very rare civilization where our culture is a living tradition of our ancient wisdom. Ayurveda describes four ways of life, as I said, Hit and Ahita, Sukha and Dukha. So our phases of VUCA and pandemic times, we can look at them as Ahita life and Dukha life. So what is Hita and Sukha? It's about Loka Kalyan, chill life, everyone, not just for my selfish well being, because I'm interconnected, because I'm a continuum with the macrocosm and other people around me, other beings around me, even non living beings around me. Or it could be an insect, it could be a butterfly, it could be birds, it could be plants, vegetation around me, animals and birds, but I'm connected with them. And the moment I'm careful, I'm looking at their well-being, naturally my well-being also gets taken care. So Lokyan is Hita Ayu, which leads to Sukha Ayu. And this reminds me of a story of Daksha Prajapati. Many of you would be knowing the story of how Daksha Prajapati was a very successful king and he was organizing an event, a yajna, where he invites everyone, but he does not invite his own daughter, Sati, and her husband, Shiva. And then the story goes that Sati still comes home and she sees that everyone is invited but not her husband. And in anger, she enters the fire of Yajna and she leaves her body. Shiva comes to know about this and he comes there, and with his Gana, there is a Tanda and he destroys the Yajna of Daksha Prajapati. Now, simple level, at a very superficial level, story is about family, right? It's about a family conflict. But let's look at a deeper level. And this is while writing my chapter on Manas in my Bharatiya Manas Shastra book, I realized that the oldest description of what's mind, what's Manas, is found in Yajurveda, in the sutras that talk of Maname Shiva Sankalpam Astu. And then there's a description of what is Manas, how does it behave, and why should it have a Shiva Sankalpa. So Shiva at one level can be seen as a epitome of Loka Kalyana. Shiva is Kalyan. Shiva is welfare and well-being of everyone. It's not just welfare or well-being of an individual or a community or a society. And when you do not invite Shiva, have an event where your business does not have Shiva as a sankalpa, then obviously, materialistically, it may be beneficial, but it will get destroyed. Why? Because it does not have Loka Kalyana in heart or mind. So, Hita and Sukhayu framework describes individual at three levels. It gives us a worldview, Jivan Drashti. I call it metacognition in English because meta is a higher view, right? When we have meta view, we are able to see. Let's say you are lost in traffic. You don't know where to go, or you are stuck in traffic and you are not able to find a way to reach your airport early, what do? Most of us today take help of GPS, right? You have a Google map which shows you different routes and which shows you from where in less traffic and less time you can reach your destination. Don't we need such a map, such a meta view of our own life? The moment we have this meta view of what the world is, what our life is, then obviously the path we choose, obviously the choices that we make will reach us to the destination of moksha. However, and if even if moksha is not your aim, lead a happy and life of well-being is everyone's aim, right? Meditation then naturally comes to our heart because most of us still now have been, from industrial revolution till now, we have lived a very brain-centered life. Now is the era of heart-centered life, heart-centered principles, because meditation gives us meta values. Where these values lead us, obviously they lead us to skills that we learn and skills that we can apply in our everyday life. So he wants us to understand I beautifully, even health in Ayurveda, it's not a vague concept. I've looked at many, handbooks. These are fat handbooks of 1,000+ pages from the Western world, talking of health, wellness, well-being, happiness. However, you will find lot of confusion between different articles or different contributions. They have still not been able to describe health as a positive construct, though WHO has given us a definition. Most of the times we see health as opposed to disease. Most of the time, even peace is seen as opposed to war. But we have as a positive construct on its own. And Ayurveda beautifully describes health as a physical and psychological, social and spiritual integration and harmony, balanced way of living, which creates health. Swastha. Swastha. Somebody who's rooted, who's grounded in self. And that person is called a healthy person. The same for Hitayu and Sukhayu. Our acharyas have given us exact skill sets or values or philosophy that the person should have also translate into everyday living. So Hitayu, first of all, means the metacognition, Bhutanam Hiteshi. I think of Pancharina, the first one being Bhuta, and in Hitayu, first definition begins with Bhutanam Hiteshi. Unless I have the Hita, the well being of every Bhuta around me, I will not be able to lead a life which is ultimately leading to my well being and happiness. So, this interconnectedness helps us understand our as a small self, I say, which is very xenophobic understanding of who we are. If we look at ourselves apart from nature, apart from cosmos, then we are trapped in very xenophobic understanding of who we are. But the moment we expand our consciousness, we are able to self-transcendent. And this is beautifully relating to the many of the modern psychological theories also. Because when we look at the expand Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is not very popular, most people only and know the 5 levels or hierarchy of need from basic needs, safety needs, social need, esteem needs to self-actualization. However, beyond esteem needs, Maslow has given needs need for knowledge and need for aesthetic. And you and Sukhayu, you realize that the need for knowledge is given as one of the need that needs to be fulfilled to lead to Sukha Ayu. And self-transcendence is given as one of the need as Hitayu. So need for respect, need for knowledge, and beyond self-actualization, Maslow has actually talked of self-transcendence. However, it becomes very easy when our life is rooted in dharma, first principles of sustainability through culture and virtues. Most of the literature of psychology till now does not talk of character and virtues. You only see in earlier times of Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, then there is full range of psychology literature which is devoid of virtue and character. And then suddenly, with positive psychology, you see character and virtues as coming back into the essential part of our living. So Hita gives us future orientation, long term implication, long term orientation, not just being right and I feel good. I take serotonin and my happiness level rises. No, it roots you into a dharmic way of living. And it's also social collective well-being, which becomes very important in an individual's life. So Sukhayu goes, Hita leads to Sukhayu. Sukhayu goes beyond pleasure principle, you know, and it's about Su and Her, the two words. They're very interesting. Su means auspicious, good, right? Beneficial, of course, more than auspicious. And Her is space. Now, what is the space where we live? Of course, the first thing that we live in our body, we live in our mind, our manas, we live in our family and community, we live in a nation, and we belong to the world. Today, everyone is talking of global managers, but Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam has always been very critical in our way of life in Bharata. So, how to become Sukhi, or how do you lead a life of Sukha Ayu? It can be only by creating auspiciousness in body, manas, family, community, nation, and world. You will bring God. Our Rishis never said, eat this and you'll be happy. Have a bigger house, have a big car, and you'll be happy. They knew the limitedness of such happiness. So it must be achieved through dharma. Also, there is, looking this Bhagavad Gita saying this, that ashantasya kuta sukham. So you need to have shanti, peace, rooted in yourself to experience sukha. It has to be inclusive and indriya jaya, not just indulgent in pleasure, which gives happiness, but indriya jaya, use our indriya with control, not just suppress, understand where is a boundary. How much indulgence do we get into? Not ati yoga, nor ayoga or mithya yoga, but the right sanyoga of our indriya with the artha that give us pleasure. So Hitayu, these are qualities of a person who's leading a life of Hitayu. And you see that it's so comprehensive. When being is what Bhutanam Hiteshi that I talked about, it goes all the way in other people around you, including the society, inclusiveness of ecology, managing our own emotions well, and becoming selfless and self transcending. Same way with Sukhayu. Qualities, right? If you look at the Sanskrit that is written in Charak Samhita, it says Sharir Rogena Anavidruta. That is physical wellness. You are without any roga in your body. Because where do we live first? We live in our body. And Manas rogena anabhidruta. So your manas is also free of disease. And how does that happen? Physical wellness comes because when you follow the dinacharya, ritucharya, the ways that are given in Ayurveda to lead a happy life and healthy life. Second, emotional Ayurveda believes Sattva, Rajas, Tamas are the three energies out of which we are made. Everything in the universe is made up of that. However, Manas Roga happens because of overindulgence or wrong indulgence of Rajas and Tamas. Someone doing Dharma guides and Kama. If Sattva is the guide for Rajas and Tamas, then there is mental and emotional well being. However, the moment we allow either Rajas or Tamas to guide our life, then our life goes into a different direction. The third term here, youthful, it's very beautiful because now we are talking of chronological age and biological age. Imagine our acharyas in Ayurveda so many years ago have about youthfulness, every age. And all the way it goes to your ability to enjoy what you have, ability to travel, ability to have desired results. And now let me share with all of you very important framework. So we began with dharmic frameworks. We looked at Panchamaha, we looked at four Purushartha, we looked at Pancharina, we looked at Hita Ayu and Sukha Ayu. We looked at also Loka Purusha Samya Siddhanta. Now let's look at Janpadodhwansa. Explaining the dynamics. However, very beautifully also talks of climate change, why climate change and pandemic have happened. It also talks of how we as individual and we collectively need to take responsibility for these events that are happening, into the world. And how do we create the new normal? You know, now, people in climate change have been talking of Anthropocene, right? That human beings have created this climate change. And how do we take responsibility? So the framework goes backward. So it begins with current global pandemic. Why did that happen? And it's beautiful that when you go back, you realize that it happened because of Vikruti. What kind of Vikruti? Vikruti is unnatural way of being, right? And we can call it in modern terms, this Vikruti as climate change. So where all did the Vikruti happen? Vikruti, where we all have been talking about air pollution. We also keep the Lok Purusha Samya Siddhanta in mind. We talk of polluted air. The same air is also within us. And naturally, diseases related to air within us have been going up. So, outside, pollution outside is not just affecting the environment, it is also affecting us within our body. And manas, Vikrut water. We all have seen how contaminated water rivers are happening, right? Vikrut Desha. And this is again the beauty of Sanskrit language and Ayurveda acharyas. Desha can be described at four levels. So, one is, of course, a geographical level where we live, which city or where do we live, social community where we are living, our physical body with which we are residing is our desha. Our deha is our desha. And psychological, our manas, where we also reside, our manas is also our desha. Now we realize that geographically, whatever pollution or vikruti we are observing in the desha, we are also seeing that being impacted into our being. And in Janpadodhwansa, this desha is explained beautifully, even at a psychological level. And the Acharya very clearly says that where people are not living by the Dharma, where people have forgotten what it is to be responsible to self and society, this is where Vikruti starts spreading. And the fourth Vikruti, you can change a city to avoid the air pollution. You can change another city to, avoid the water pollution. But Desha and Kala are very difficult to change. I cannot change my body, right? I mean, for that, one has to die, leave this body, and get another body. Psychologically, Manas needs a lot of Kriya Yoga, lot of tapas to remove the Rajas and Tamas, creating a negative impact on myself. However, Vikru, which is the changes in season, we have been experiencing this and calling it a climate change, that we see unseasonal changes happening around us. It rains when it's not the season for rain, comes cold when it's supposed to be warm and summery, comes very hot, extreme heat in summer, or there is even snow where there was never snow in that country. So all these Vikruti, what we call today climate change, have created Janpadodhwansa. However, what created climate change? And that's when you go back, you realize that lack of dharma, which came out of the greed. It was the greed which created lack of dharma, created the climate change and pandemic. So where does greed or lack of dharma lead? And how does it get reflected? It gets reflected unsustainable practices at personal level and business level. Also, it's reflected in governance or the kings, the CEOs, CFOs, right? Or the heads of nation not practicing dharma. Also is because of wars for power. And for many years now, on this planet Earth, we have seen a lot of wars. We are still witnessing wars every day. The news that when you want to see news, it's most of the times negative news because of war, because of conflict, because of power struggle. Now I'm reminded of a small story which actually I studied long time ago in my school age as a part of Gujarati language class. It is written by Kalapi, and the poetry is called Gramya Mata. It's about a king, and we can replace king with heads of corporates or heads of nations today, or even heads of WHO, heads of United Nations. We can connect it to anyone who's at a governance or a leadership position. So there was a king long time ago, and many moons ago, earlier, kings used to always dress as a common person and go around, see how their people are doing in life. And this king was on his horse, and he's going around looking at what's happening in his city, and he is riding, and he leaves the city and he's out in the open farm area, and he's looking around. The day is going up. He had started very early in the morning, and now he's very thirsty. So when he looks around the farm, he sees an old lady working in the sugarcane farm. So he goes there without getting down from the horse, because at least in his mind he knows he's a king. So he asks the lady, "Will you give me some water? I'm thirsty." So lady very compassionately tells him that, "Why water? I'll give you sugarcane juice." She removes one sugarcane, said, even she cuts it, juice pours out. It's very juicy. Then she takes out juice, and in a glass she gives it to the king. The king absent-mindedly gets the juice. He loves juice, and he's looking around at the farm, and he's thinking that this year crop seems very good. Maybe farmers are going to be very rich, and I should sell more. I should take more from them, because I'm sure they are going to have good crop this year. However, very absent-mindedly, he gives the empty glass back to the old lady and requests her for one more glass that I'm still thirsty. So the mother says, okay, wait. And she takes out another sugar cane. However, now when she cuts it, it's turned dry. There is no juice in the sugar cane. And the mother is shocked. I mean, she looks at the sugar cane and she looks at the ground, Mother Earth, and then she sits down and starts crying. So this kid is very surprised. Says, why are you crying? This sugarcane does not have juice. Take out another sugarcane. Your first one was so good. I'm sure the other one, if you take it out, it will give you juice again. The mother nods her head unhappily and she says, no, you're not realizing. Something very adharmic is happening. The king of this place has got some adharmic thought in his mind, and therefore the juice of Mother Earth has dried. I mean, look, profound psychological insight in the wisdom this uneducated mother had. She doesn't know he's a king. She has not gone to college to study psychology, governance, public policy, nothing. But she knows that the king has to be dharmic. King has to think only of the hita of praja. So if the king does not think of the hita of praja, but has some greed enter his mind, then Mother Earth will lose her sustainability. And when he listens to this, suddenly touches his heart. Now he gets down from the horse and he touches the feet of this mother, old lady, and says, please forgive me. I'm the king. I was the one who had this negative thought in my mind about taxing people more. And now I seek your forgiveness and I will not think of such thoughts again. And this story, this poem has stayed with me for so many decades. And it came again when I was working on this, you know, framework of Janpadodhwansa. So now what's the way out? What I mean, post-pandemic, we all have been talking about new normal, right? So if lack of dharma, it's the cause of climate change and pandemic, life is very easy. All we need to do is create a personal shift. Once personal shift is created, there will be shift in businesses and governance also at a collective level. Nations to integrate practices of dharma. See how well-being of individual and well-being of planet is connected. Generally, we say there are three P's for any corporate, right? I mean, it has to be planet, people, and profit. Unfortunately, planet and people have taken a back seat, and only profit, profit, profit have become the three P. And therefore, now we need public policy and leadership, which is rooted in dharma, to create the new world order and the future evolutionary state of humanity. How do we create the new normal? One of my favorite philosopher is Henry Thoreau. Henry Thoreau had very beautifully written down that we are living too fast rather than deep. So the moment you want to live deep, you have to slow down. We experienced that during the lockdown. Of course, those people who were economically harmed or socially harmed, we all have compassion for them. But is slowing down has helped humanity, has helped the environment. Once we slow down, obviously questioning status quo happens because we are more aware. Now, the self responsibility comes. There is a paradigm shift, which we call a point of return. And Satish Kumar, generally people have been talking about climate change and saying that, oh, there is no paradigm shift, right? I mean, sorry, there is no point of return. Satish Kumar, a Jain monk, settled in UK for many years and the editor of ecological magazine, The Resurgence, says that like how Jains follow this pratikramana, for us also pratikramana or a point of return is there, and we can go back to dharma, and therefore we can pause and reset our lives to dharma. So connection between dharmic frameworks, and I can even connect it not just to our not to just our well-being, individual well-being, but also to planetary well-being at United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, right? Most of them are far away from being fulfilled. And therefore, what United Nations goals needs is a connection with dharmic framework. I'm talking a very Bharatiya language, but many of the indigenous cultures have their own dharmic frameworks. So let's say if all indigenous cultures come together, we put our all dharmic frameworks together, create this shift from brain-centered life to heart-centered life, then obviously planetary and individual well-being will be achieved much faster. So now we look at connections, how metacognition or meta-knowledge gives us these connections to Lokapurush Samya Siddhant, macrocosm, microcosm. Hitayu and Sukhayu give us the meta values and cognition knowledge both. And Janpadodhwansa actually helps us understand the interconnectedness and our lives. However, now let's very individual, right? Because many of you may be feeling that, oh, we have gone through the entire macrocosm and planetary well being. What individual well being? So, matrix of self really helps us, you know, and we need a matrix. What is the matrix? The matrix has to be of Triguna, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, with Panchmahabhuta, Akash, Vayu, Agni, Jala, and Prithvi. Akash is Sattva dominant, Vayu is Rajas dominant, Agni is Sattva and Rajas dominant, Jala is Sattva and Tamas dominant, and Prithvi is Tamas dominant. So all of us are made up, and everything in this cosmos is made up of Panchmahabhuta and Triguna matrix. The moment we understand this, then obviously we'll create a lifestyle, we'll create Sukha in everything that we do in our life. Therefore, we need to understand the connection between Sharira, Manasa, Indriya, and Atma. Because all these are interconnected, and their interconnection creates our well being and happiness. All the emotions that we experience are a matrix of 3 into 5, three energies, Triguna, and Panchmahabhuta. And harmony and balance, alignment of them will create our own well being. So, if emotional well being, I mean, very simple, because some of you may say, okay, I've understood theoretical frameworks, but what can I take back? What's my takeaway? Very simple. What changes do I make in my life? So, these are the three things. One takeaway is that you need to take enough breaks, walk around, get enough sunlight, breathe deep and full, do stretching, you know, simple shoulder and foot exercises if your job requires you to sit in one place for a long time, and spend time with nature. So when you take breaks for these things in everyday life, your life will certainly have more hita and sukha. And cycles to be followed. Very simple. Cycle of the sun and cycle of the moon. And cycle sun also creates seasons, right? So seasonal changes apart from morning to night changes. So why do we need to wake up before sunrise? Because many of you would, have a life where night owls are more prominent, right? However, our circadian rhythm, and people have got, Japanese scientists have got no prize to prove what our Ayurveda always knew, that the sun and our body are aligned with each other. It's only in the morning. Why? Ayurvedacharya beautifully describe our heart as a lotus, an inverted lotus. And when you look at biomimicry is imitating nature, create products. But if you imitate nature to create a lifestyle, biomimicry for our heart is a lotus flower, and heart is called Hriday Kamala. So a lotus flower blooms with the sun and closes with the sun. So the same way we have our exercises in the morning and not in the evening, when the heart wants to reflect, wants to go inward rather than outside. Have lunch before 2 p.m. Why? Because as the sun rises, the Agni in our body rises and it will start consuming you, creating acid related problems if you do not give enough food to the body before 2 p.m. and start winding up our day, our going out with sunset. Same with the moon, artificial light post sunset, no technology, minimum 1 hour before sleep. Listen to soft music, meditate, deep breathing, enjoy darkness, so that what happens is the melatonin can work on its own. And I would love to end with this quotation, which is my favorite from Sri Aurobindo, who's one of my gurus, that at present we are going through an evolutionary crisis. However, our mind has a possibility to come out of this evolutionary crisis and also achieve an evolutionary growth. So, with that, I end the presentation. Any questions, suggestions? Dhanyavadaha.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that session. It was extremely important to understand the Indic perspective on well-being. One of the questions that comes to mind is that, with the increasing isolation one can see within society, there is less sense of community, there is more individualism, especially in the urban areas. I feel like that has a greater impact on the well-being of homemakers than anyone else. Whether it was, the community practice of rangoli making or the community practice of going together to the temple together, all of those things have gone away. And that isolation has a more pernicious effect on homemakers than it does for working professionals. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure, very nice question, Ojasvi. Thank you. Uh, Not homemakers, even children who are growing up with both parents going to work, right? And unfortunately, you don't have grandparents these days. So the younger generation is either left in artificial care of somebody else, or they are latchkey generation, right? So if they are little grown up enough, they have the key to the house, they come on their own. But then, do they eat the right food? Do they eat at the right time? How much screen time they are spending? Even parents don't know, right? So what is happening is, of course, homemakers are at a loss because, as you rightly gave examples, our festivals are all community-based festivals. We never have individual festivals, right? I mean, there is nothing that we do only singly, individually, right? Also, the families most of the times were extended family, everyone staying together. So now we need a coach, a mentor, a counselor, a psychiatrist, a psychologist. Do all that our aunts and grandmothers were doing at home, right? For many decades, I've been saying that we need to bring family in our life. There is no short to that. For people of my age, right? I mean, when you have an empty nest, your children have flown away, right? It's a global lifestyle. So what do? getting frustrated or being alone and getting into depression at home. I live for last 6 years in a community living, and I have about 10 grandchildren here who are not biologically connected with me. But when they come from school, you should see their joy and the way they hug me, and the time we spend together. So we need to find out community. Whether you are able to find it within your family, it's great. If not within the family, with area around your house, right? Try and connect people. Unfortunately, what has happened nowadays, is there are no grandmothers at home, right? So even a lot of young women who are getting pregnant, first of all, they avoid pregnancy. But if they are pregnant, there's no support. There is no one there to guide them what to eat, what medicine to take, how to take care of yourself and the baby, right? So the well from pregnancy state of a child in the womb is also getting compromised, right? And therefore, I don't see any shortcut, but getting families back in your life is very critical, very critical.
Ma'am, another question that comes to my mind is the Maslow hierarchy of needs. You know how it kind of prioritizes where belongingness must come together and all of that. And moreover, I feel like the concept of self-actualization would be very different from an Indic perspective as it is from the Western psychology perspective. So, what would self-actualization mean in our context? And how valid or invalid is the hierarchy of needs as presented by Maslow?
Uh, Going back to Maslow, hierarchy of need, it was never hierarchy as such. It was never a pyramid the way we are being taught or the way we are spreading it. It's an absolutely wrong projection of Maslow's original theory, right? Maslow only gave a theory of needs. He had a hierarchy of needs. So there is first basic and then social and then self actualization, right? In terms of knowledge need, the need for aesthetic, need for self transcendence, remove. His original literature is not being made popular. So we are given a very wrong understanding, that this is what Maslow said. Also about self-actualization, what Maslow writes, there is a beautiful book called The Psychology of Being by Abraham Maslow, in which he explains in great detail our self-actualizers. This comes very closer to what we call signature strength through Panch Mahabhuta. Okay, I run a program called Find Your Own Signature Strength through Panch Mahabhuta. Because if we all are made up of Panch Mahabhuta, right, and Triguna and Tridosha, then who I am, who am I, what is my strength, will be determined by which Mahabhuta is dominant in me, right? Bhuta, I don't have much, but maybe my career, my work area, my education requires that. How do I balance it out? Right? So, what Maslow describes of self actualizers in his original work is very close to Indic perspective. It's all about passion, finding your own talent. And my book actually says we have to go to cosmos to understand who we are. He just leaves in that one sentence because he doesn't talk of Panchmahabhuta and anything else, right? He doesn't go into microcosm like we do in Bharat. You know, uh, he puts it in one line that the way we have understood ourselves is very limiting, and we must go to cosmos to understand who we are.
Ma'am, this question would be slightly extraneous to well-being. However, I would want you to tell me what the fundamental differences between Indic psychology and Western psychology are. Like one of the things that you pointed out was that positive psychology was something that was explored by the West very late. So that is a very interesting observation. I would want you to also elaborate on that.
Say, this is very close to my heart, very close to my heart. That's the main difference between Western psychology and Bhartiya psychology. Okay, Western psychology began with pathology, right? And it's if psychology is brain centered, right? It's a Karma model, positive emotion, engagement. Engagement. Pathology to positive psychology. Brain. That's one of the major limitation of psychology from the West. Now, when we look Bharat, right? Many people ask me that psychology in India, there was nothing in psychology. I said, "Yes, it's own philosophy or poetry. And our philosophy, poetry, both lot of psychology, right? So when you go back, I mean, even if you go back as Rig Veda or Atharva Veda, like the beauty of Atharva Veda is, it's called Atma Veda. So Bharatiya Manas Shastra is also a very limiting word because in Bharat we believed in Atma Gyan, right? Manas is just this little tiny part of who we are. Is Bharat. Even if I cull out wisdom from all the philosophies of India and even health care treatises like Charak Samhita, ultimates of heart, brain is not the center. Heart becomes the center because even in yoga, Ravi Samhita, right? Consciousness resides in the heart. The West is struggling to understand consciousness. For them, consciousness is something very as superficial as, okay, I'm conscious or I'm not conscious. you know so consciousness for us is the fundamental energy from which all of us have come. Universe has come consciousness, right? And Ayurveda very clearly says that Hriday is the sthan chetana sthanam. So even Ayurveda says consciousness resides in the heart. And they part which you'll be very happy to note that Carl Jung has written something on it again, which has not been made popular. Okay, that's referred to Taittiriya Upanishad, where the Upanishad talks of Hriday, not blood, but Hriday as Anahat Chakra. And Carl Jung has very specifically talked of chakras as anatomy. And he says that the lower chakras are our animal evolution. Anahat chakra or heart chakra is a place where transformation happens. And then Vishuddhi chakra, Agya chakra, Sahasrara chakra are the transformation. So we connect that with self-actualization or even self-transcendence. Very beautifully, you see that in the work of Candace Pert. She was a psychoneuroimmunologist, right? But she acknowledges Ayurveda and yoga. And she has coined a word which is called psychosomatic wellness. See, most people only talk of psychosomatic disease, right? She was the only one who talks of psychosomatic wellness. And she comes back to Anam Chakra. She's actually created audios of Anam Chakra for psychosomatic wellness. Is these ones are sidelined. Congresspert's work is sidelined. Nobody has taken it forward after her death. Abraham Maslow's eight hierarchy of needs, and it's not even hierarchy, it's very wrong to call it hierarchy. Because many coexist at the same point. What Maslow's lower needs are deficit needs. So physiological need, safety need, and even social need. It's a necessity need. When we don't have, we need it, right? Some higher needs, he calls them growth needs. So they are not deficit need. We need to be fulfilling growth needs. Sometimes we even compromise our lower needs because they are not at center, right? We know of everyone who's involved in a work, you forgo your lunch, right? You are late for your lunch, but you don't care because you are doing something with passion, right? Since for those people whom need is center, they never reach the growth need. Once you have transcended growth need, these you need to fulfill. I need food because I need to survive. This stage in my life. Successful people, like
That was a wonderful answer, ma'am. Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of the question answer session as well as the talk today. We wish to have many such talks with you. Namaste.
just